I grew up in San Pablo, California, which is in the East Bay. I was born in Richmond Hospital in February 8, 1977. And I grew up in San Pablo, and that was my first barrio. It was called Barrio San Pablo. And we were the Peewees, the second generation of that barrio, known as Norteños. I later on moved around Richmond with my father and my mother. We moved to North Richmond, Central Richmond, South Richmond, and Rollingwood and San Pablo. But I grew up in a poor neighborhood. My father was getting locked up. I was taken to a foster home when I was 10 years old. My father beating on me as a child, stabbed me in the stomach with a fork, hit me in the face with some belts. And he was an abusive dad. He's changed a lot now, you know. I love him still. He's my father. He's my only father. I didn't want to live with my mother. My parents got divorced when I was 11 years old. And I didn't want to live with my mother because now she became the disciplinarian in my life. And so I escaped one and ran into another. And so in leaving, trying to get away from my mother, I found myself more and more in the streets. And as I found myself more and more in the streets, I found myself finding my dad in the streets. And I was running into older homeboys in the barrio, and they were, "Hey, that's your dad, he's a cool homeboy," and okay, all right. So now I found myself drinking and smoking and hanging out with my dad and my homeboys in the neighborhood. But because I began to see him more now as a friend than as a father, in a way that was bad, because that friendship was a really negative friendship. You know, it was one that was based on drugs and women and alcohol and partying and spending money and, you know, getting caught up in that life. I don't think it was it wasn't an attraction in the sense where you're attracted to something and you say, "Oh, I'm gonna be like that tomorrow," or "I'm gonna go and buy that tomorrow." It was like this natural evolution, you know. You are what you experience. I was becoming what I was experiencing in my neighborhood, and what I was experiencing as a young man was drug sales, drugs in my home, my parents on drugs, people I knew around or hung around selling drugs, people that I grew up with involved in gangs. I just naturally went with the flow of those things. I wasn't a really standout guy. I wasn't creating no new paths for how to live our lives in the barrio. I was just kind of following the same path that all the rest of my generation was following, which was one that led us into the gutters and the trenches of life. When I paroled, I didn't know where I was going to live. I didn't know what county I was going to, what city I was going to, what house I was going to. My original plan was to move to Stockton, which is San Joaquin County in the Central Valley. Come to find out after I paroled that was denied, and I was going to be released in San Francisco County because that's where I was arrested at. That was my county of commitment, what they call. What happened with that was I was dropped off out here, and I didn't know nobody in San Francisco. I didn't have a place to stay. What did help me was PNS and the Beat Within and David Inocencio and Catherine Black and Matt Malamed and Michael Zack and all the other great folk that work here who I met when I got out, giving me a job, giving me an opportunity despite all the stereotypes, despite everything that I had been through in my life and the things that I admit to in my life which are embarrassing, I'm ashamed of, you know, some bad things that I did when I was young. But despite all that, they had faith that I had transformed my mentality and that, you know, I was determined to do something more positive out here and to give me an opportunity to do that with them, to get a job and to have for the first time in my life, a legitimate income. If I didn't have this and, you know, without the determination and education that I got from my peers while I was incarcerated and educating myself while I was incarcerated, then I wouldn't have been able to endure this transition. I wouldn't have made it. I would have went back to what I know, you know. I would have went back to what I knew how to do and how I knew how to make money. The things that I could have got that would have helped me more is more support from the parole department and from the state, from the system. They basically released me after 10.5 years in prison with no education, no vocational training, and gave me $200 and told me, "Here, you got to go get a hotel." And a hotel was $175 a week, you know. So okay, I could buy a hotel for a week, but what am I going to do after that? You know, they didn't offer me no jobs, they didn't offer me no vouchers, they didn't give me clothing, they didn't give me food, nothing. Definitely probably one of the highest points would have to be completion of the first mural at Columbia Park Boys and Girls Club. You know, that when we completed that mural, then we had that dedication ceremony. That was a real big stepping stone for me, you know, and giving me confidence that I can do this project.
I participated in a dialogue with the youth here in the community where we translated their language that was written into a visual language that translates, you know, and transcends all the borders, all the cultures that has international theme to it. You know, we participated in this dialogue that was revolutionary in this community, you know, that brought people together from different backgrounds, from different neighborhoods, you know, and helped them find commonality, you know, helped them find that shared experience that fosters unity and solidarity, you know, and make them feel proud about who they are and where they come from, you know, and what they can do and believe in themselves, you know.
I discovered that culture and politics were a great incentive, you know. I use that as an incentive to try to get at them and tell them, you know what, if you're from 19th Street or 24th Street and you're claiming this block and you'll die for this block, man, these blocks ain't gonna be around forever, homeboy. You know, look at Valencia Gardens, look at the Jets, you know, look at Army Street. These are sets and hoods and barrios that, you know, people did die for, you know, and they're not even there no more. Not only couldn't I let myself down and the people that supported me down, but now I had all these kids who were on the verge of getting into what I was getting into, depending on me, you know, and we pulled through in a strong way, you know. You got to give them vision, give them a vision of something in the future that, you know, is so inspiring and so beautiful to them that it's worth fighting for, you know. And that vision that I try to give them is not just a vision of being free from addiction and free from incarceration, but free from looking over our shoulders, free from injustices, free from corruption, free from having to worry about what colors you wear, because we'll be united. My orientation now towards these kids is to use the same means that I used and other people used to influence me to change. How, you know, Diego Rivera convinced me, and how Mao Zedong convinced me, and how George Jackson convinced me, and Che Guevara convinced me. You know, all of these people convinced me, you know. It goes back to the story that I've told a million times since I've been out, you know, about that old Africano in San Quentin on death row who's condemned to die, you know, and he is probably one of the most beautiful examples of humanity that I know inside the prison system, telling me, you know, you are going to become what you experience. You're going to grow up in prison. Do you want to become a product of this environment? Do you want to be like the rest of these men coming in and out, you know, or do you want to become something greater? And I chose to be something greater.